Hello, everyone. So, this would be our last lecture on the respiratory system, where we're going to cover the lung volumes and capacities. We can say that several specific lung volumes they can be measured as a way to assess pulmonary function, and a record of lung volumes and lung capacities, which basically is a combination of the lung volumes, is known as a spirogram. And the device that's used to measure them is called a spirometer, and the breathing test is called spirometry. Therefore, this individual in the image is using a spirometer to do a spirometry so he can see his pulmonary function by analyzing a spirogram. Doctors, they may order a spirometry if you have wheezing, for example, shortness of breath, or even a cough, and will basically measure the flow of air through your lungs, and it estimates the amount of air in your lungs. And it also tells a healthcare provider how strong your lungs are and how well you breathe. And it will help, for example, to diagnose lung and airway diseases, which may include asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, cystic fibrosis, which we have talked already about, and pulmonary fibrosis. With regards to asthma, it's going to be this chronic, usually long-term condition that affects the airways in the lungs. Now, the airways are, as we know, these tubes that carry air in and out of our lungs. And if you have asthma, because the airways, they are going to usually be inflamed, then they become narrow, and this makes it harder for the air to flow out of your airways when you breathe out because it's constricted and narrow. With regards to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is commonly known as COPD, this will be a group of diseases that cause airflow blockage and breathing related problems, and it usually includes emphysema, which is a lung disease that damages the alveoli of the lungs. And the primary symptom of emphysema is shortness of breath. And the other condition is chronic bronchitis, which usually is a lung condition that destroys the cilia in your airways. And as we know, the cilia are these cells that move the germs and other debris out of your airways. So there's a higher chance of the individual that has COPD of getting, for example, a bacterial infection. Now, pulmonary fibrosis is going to be a lung disease that occurs when the lung tissue becomes damaged or scarred. And this thickened, stiff tissue, it makes it more difficult for the lungs to work properly, as you can imagine. And the worse this disease gets, the more progressively short of breath you become. So it's really concerning, because if you become short of breath, then you're not breathing air in, therefore your cells are lacking oxygen that they need to be able to survive. Here we have other lung diseases, some of which you might have heard of. But first, let's talk about eupnea, which basically is normal, good, healthy, and unlabored breathing. And sometimes it's known actually as quiet breathing or resting respiratory rate. And in eupnea, the expiration employs only the elastic recoil of the lungs, so the natural recoil. There's no muscles that will be helping in this process. Next, we have apnea, and this is when you stop breathing while asleep, or you have an almost no airflow. Anything that could narrow your airways, such as obesity, large tonsils, or changes in your hormone levels can increase your risk for this type of obstructive sleep apnea. Now, central sleep apnea happens when your brain does not send the signals that are needed for you to be able to breathe. And these normal signals come from the brainstem. So somehow your brainstem is not able to send the signals for you to breathe normally while you're asleep. And patients that have apnea, they sometimes need to sleep using an oxygen mask to make sure that there's enough oxygen flowing into their lungs. Next, we have dyspnea, which is also shortness of breath and is the feeling that you can't get enough air into your lungs. It might feel like your chest is tight, or you're gasping for air, or you're having to work harder to be able to breathe. And heart and lung conditions are common causes of dyspnea. Last, we have tuberculosis, which is actually caused by a bacteria that receives that name. So, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the bacteria usually attacks the lungs, but this bacteria can also attack any part of the body, such as the kidney, the spine, or the brain. And not everyone that's infected with tuberculosis bacteria actually becomes sick, but they do spread the bacteria around. So this is why it's important for you to get tested for this bacteria, because like I said, not everybody knows that they're infected if they don't present any of the signs of tuberculosis, like a really strong cough, for example. Let's focus now on the lung volumes. And in general, lung volumes, they're larger in males, in taller individuals, and younger adults, and they're smaller in the opposites, so females, shorter individuals, and elderly. Now, various disorders may be diagnosed just by comparison of the actual and the predicted normal values for a patient, depending, of course, on gender, height, and age, according to what we have just discussed with regards to which types will have lung volumes that are large and which types will have lung volumes that are small. And this is also how the spirometer is going to be helpful in telling us if your lungs are working or not by comparing the patient's results with the normal result values. Examples of lung volumes are listed below, and the values that are given are averages of young adults. First, we have what we call tidal volume, which can be abbreviated by VT. And this is going to be the volume of air that's inspired or expired during a single breathing cycle under resting conditions. So it equals 500 mLs in an average adult male or female. Therefore, for this lung volume, it is the same for males and females. In the inspiratory reserve volume, it will be the maximum volume of air that can be inspired after a normal inspiration. And this is about 3,000 mLs in an average adult male and 1,900 mLs in an average adult female. Next, we have expiratory reserve volume, which is the maximum volume of air that can be expired after a normal expiration. And it averages 1,100 in adult male and 700 in adult female. Next, we have the residual volume, which is the volume of air that remains, that's why it's called residual, in the lungs after a maximum expiration. And this will amount to 1,200 mLs in males and 1,100 mLs in females. So it's pretty close. And this air remains in the lungs because the subatmospheric intrapleural pressure keeps the alveoli slightly inflated. And some air also remains in the non-collapsible airways. And because it does not leave the lungs, then the residual volume and any lung capacity that included the residual volume cannot be measured with a spirometer. Next, we have the lung capacities that are calculated basically by adding together two or more of the specific lung volumes that we mentioned in the previous slide. So let's go over each of these. So functional residual capacity is the volume of air in the lungs at the end of a normal expiration. And it is going to be the sum of the residual volume and the expiratory reserve volume. So in males, this will be about 2,300 mLs, and in females, it will be about 1,800 mLs. Next, we have the inspiratory capacity, which is the maximum volume of air that can be inspired after a normal expiration. This is going to be the sum of the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume. So for males, this will be 3,500, and for females, it will be 2,400. Next, we have what we call the vital capacity, which is going to be the maximum volume of air that can be expired after a maximum inspiration. So this will be equal to the sum of the inspiratory reserve volume, the tidal volume, and the expiratory reserve volume. And for males, this will be 4,600, and for females, it will be 3,100. In addition, we do have a term related to the vital capacity, which is the forced expiratory volume in 1 second. And this is the volume of air that can be exhaled from the lungs in 1 second with maximal effort following a maximal inspiration. And in normal conditions, this volume, the forced expiratory volume in 1 second, is going to be about 80% of the vital capacity. And typically, individuals that have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, they have greatly reduced FEV1 because COPD actually increases the airway's resistance. And lastly, we have the total lung capacity, which is the total volume of air in the lungs after a maximum inspiration. And this is going to be the sum of the vital capacity and the residual volume. Therefore, 5,800 mLs in males and 4,200 mLs in females. In a typical adult, about 70% of the tidal volume, which is about 350 mLs, actually reaches the respiratory zone of the respiratory system, which are the respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar ducts, and the alveolar sacs, which are represented here. And in this respiratory zone is where we will have the gas exchange. Now the other 30%, which is about 150 mLs, will remain in the conducting zone, which basically is everything above the respiratory bronchioles. So the nose, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles, and the terminal bronchioles. And this 150 ml volume of the conducting zone is actually known as the anatomic dead space because it contains air that does not undergo gas exchange. Therefore, not all of the minute ventilation can be used in the gas exchange because some of it will remain in this anatomic dead space. So we can also say that the alveolar ventilation is going to be the volume of air per minute that actually reaches the respiratory zone. Therefore, that actually reaches the respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar ducts, and the alveolar sacs. And alveolar ventilation is typically about 4,200 mLs per minute. And how do we get this number? Well, remember that the respiratory rate is about 12 breaths per minute. Therefore, if we multiply 12 by the 350 mLs, we will get the 4,200 mLs per minute.